My wife left for the trip without me, and left the kids behind. Imagine this, you wake up to find your life in ruins, your wife is gone. Your kids left behind at the airport. And everything you thought you knew about your marriage is a lie. That's exactly what happened to me. She left me for a richer man, now I'm getting my revenge. And trust me, you won't believe what I did next. Stick around to see how betrayal, manipulation, and a calculated revenge turned everything upside down. You don't want to miss this. The sun was already climbing high in the sky as I sipped my coffee, trying to shake off the haze of a long work week. Another Saturday morning, just like the others. The kind where you hope for a few hours of peace, before everything starts moving at full speed again. My office would be waiting for me on Monday. But for now, I was content to sit in the kitchen of our Beverly Hills home, the one I'd worked so damn hard for. I glanced at my watch, 8:30 a.m. The kids were already bouncing around, getting ready for the trip Caitlin had been planning for weeks. Disney hotel, fancy dinners, the works. I'd been looking forward to it, honestly. A little getaway to break the monotony. But something in the air felt different today. It wasn't the usual Saturday calm. I had always been the one to keep things together, structuring my life, like I structured my work. It was always about hard work, responsibility, and taking care of my family. And for the most part, Caitlin had been right there with me. She had her own world, of course, spending hours on Instagram, curating this perfect life we were supposed to lead. I had let it slide. Mostly. She liked the attention, the filters, the endless selfies. I wasn't a fan of it, but hey, we all have our quirks. But today, there was a tightness in my chest as I watched her. "Hey, Aaron," Caitlin said, her voice overly bright, almost too cheerful. "This trip is going to be amazing. The kids are going to love the Disney hotel." She didn't even look up from her phone. It was as if she wasn't talking to me, just saying the words out loud, hoping someone would hear them. Her voice had that forced excitement to it, the kind that makes you pause and wonder what's really going on. I didn't respond immediately. Instead, I glanced over at her. She was scrolling through her feed, barely acknowledging me. She was always like that, too busy to look me in the eye, too busy to engage in anything deeper than the surface. I watched her for a moment, feeling something unsettling deep inside. It wasn't like the usual morning routine, where I'd sip my coffee, glance through my emails, and we'd chat casually about the day. No, something was off today. I'd seen this before, the way she'd drifted further away as time went on, the way she'd throw herself into social media like a lifeline. But I had always chalked it up to her wanting validation. What's the harm, right? She was good at playing the part, the perfect wife, the perfect mother, the perfect life. The posts were always so polished, so curated. I just didn't think it was anything to worry about. But now it felt different. I couldn't quite put my finger on it, but I felt it in the pit of my stomach. This wasn't just a simple family trip, it felt like an escape. Like something was being hidden behind those perfect pictures she was posting. A distraction. I had learned over the years that silence was the safest way to go. So I kept quiet, pushed the thoughts aside, and focused on getting the kids ready. Jack and Mia were buzzing around the kitchen, their excitement contagious. Mia pulled at my sleeve, showing off her new shoes, and Jack was half-dressed, chewing on his favorite cereal, too eager to wait for the rest of the trip. I couldn't help but smile at their innocence. They were happy, full of energy, lost in the world of make-believe and adventure. It was easy to get lost in that too, to forget about the unease gnawing at me, the feeling that something wasn't right. But as I helped Mia with her shoes, and watched Jack shove his action figure into his backpack, that unease just wouldn't leave. Caitlin wasn't present, not in the way she should have been. She was busy checking her reflection in the mirror, making sure her makeup was perfect, scrolling through her phone, not even acknowledging the kids like she usually did. I pushed the thought down again. I didn't want to confront it. But the more I thought about it, the more I couldn't ignore the fact that something was slipping. Maybe I'd been too focused on work, too wrapped up in my own routine, to see it clearly. By noon, everything was packed. Caitlin barely glanced at the kids as they eagerly lined up by the door, ready to leave. But me? I had one last meeting at the office, so I decided to drive separately to the airport. It was more efficient that way. No sooner had I mentioned this than I saw her eyes narrow for just a second. That subtle change, The flicker of something strange in her eyes sent a shiver down my spine. She laughed it off, but it wasn't a laugh that made me feel better, it was dismissive. "You always have work, don't you?" she said, her tone dripping with something I couldn't quite place. Was it sarcasm? Irritation? I didn't know, but I didn't press it. I didn't feel like arguing. We were about to take a family vacation, what was the point of ruining the mood? But as I left the house, that tightness in my chest only grew. I told myself it was nothing, just nerves, the usual pre-flight stress. But as I drove to the airport, the weight of it followed me. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. When I arrived at the check-in counter, I could feel the nerves creeping up my spine. The employee at the desk pulled up my reservation, gave me a weird look, and then shook her head. "Your reservation isn't in the system," she said, her voice flat. "What do you mean?" I asked, trying to laugh it off. "My wife booked it. We're flying out today, Hawaii. Family trip." She just stared at me. "Your reservation was canceled." Canceled? That didn't make any sense. I pulled out my phone, expecting a text or an email from Caitlin explaining what had happened. But there was nothing except a single message: "You should be taking care of the kids." Attached was a photo. I opened it, my stomach dropping. Jack and Mia were sitting on a cold metal bench, their faces streaked with tears. Sophie clutched her stuffed bear, her face red and blotchy from crying. It was like a punch in the gut. Caitlin, my wife, the mother of my children, had left us behind. She had boarded that plane without a second thought, without so much as a word to me. And there I was, standing in the airport, utterly frozen, trying to process what was happening. "Are you okay, sir?" the airline employee asked, but I didn't hear her. All I could do was run. Run through the terminal, ignoring the stares, ignoring the whispers. My mind was in free fall, trying to make sense of the betrayal, the overwhelming, suffocating feeling of abandonment. I didn't care what anyone thought. I just needed to find my kids. And when I finally saw them, sitting exactly where they had been in the photo, my heart shattered. Sophie's eyes widened with fear when she saw me. She threw herself into my arms, and Mia followed, pressing her trembling body against me. For a moment, I didn't know what to say. How could I fix this? How could I explain to them that their mother, our mother, had just walked away from everything? From them? From us? All I could do was hold them, trying to steady my breathing, trying to calm my racing heart. I had to protect them. I had to fix this. But right now, in that moment, all I could do was wonder how in the hell things had gone so wrong. The moment I grabbed Sophie and Mia, I knew my world had just fractured in a way I couldn't begin to comprehend. I could feel their little bodies trembling in my arms, as they clung to me for dear life. It was like the weight of the moment had crushed me, but I had to keep it together. I couldn't fall apart in front of them. Not now. Not when they needed me the most. I managed to get them out of the airport, away from the cold steel of the terminal, the bustling crowds, and the stares from people who had no idea what was happening. The further we got from the gate, the more I could feel my anger rising. But it wasn't just anger, it was disbelief. How could Caitlin do this to us? How could she leave me standing there, completely blindsided, while she was already on a plane to some vacation paradise? Leaving our kids behind like they didn't matter? I had spent so many years trying to be the perfect husband, the perfect father. And for what? To be abandoned like this? When we got to the parking lot, I managed to buckle them into the car. Sophie kept looking up at me, her eyes wide, her tiny face still streaked with tears. "Where's Mommy, Daddy?" she asked in that soft, innocent voice that broke something deep inside of me. Mia, still clinging to my side, was quiet, her little hand gripping my sleeve like she was trying to anchor herself to me. I didn't have an answer for them. I didn't know what to say. How do you explain to a 5-year-old that her mother had just disappeared, leaving her and her brother behind? How do you tell them the truth when it feels like the truth will destroy them? I don't know, sweetie, I said, my voice shaky despite my efforts to remain calm. But we're going to be okay. I promise. Sophie didn't say anything more, but I could feel her eyes on me, searching for answers I didn't have. Mia was still silent, but I could feel her fear in the way she pressed against me, her small body stiff, as if she was waiting for some kind of explanation that I couldn't give her. I started the car and pulled out of the lot, my mind racing. Where had Caitlin gone? What the hell had just happened? I tried calling her, but the call went straight to voicemail. I tried again, and then again, but no answer. Each ring felt like a punch in the gut. I couldn't help but wonder if she was already at the airport, sitting in a first-class seat, sipping champagne, oblivious to the mess she had just left behind. The more I thought about it, the more the rage inside of me built. But even that rage couldn't stop the crushing sense of betrayal. This wasn't just some careless mistake. This wasn't just a simple argument that escalated. No. Caitlin had planned this. She had been planning it for months, maybe longer, and I had been too blind to see it. I could still see the credit card statements in my mind, those lavish purchases that never made sense. Designer bags, private jets, luxury spas. I had tried to ignore it. I had told myself that it was just Caitlin being Caitlin, that she had her own way of doing things, that she liked the finer things in life. But now it was clear. All of it had been a facade. Every shopping spree, every overpriced trip, every perfect photo she posted online had been part of some carefully crafted lie. She had been living a double life, and I had been too busy with work to notice. I tried not to think about it, but the more I did, the more the pieces started to fit together. The way she had been acting so distant, so cold. The way she had disappeared into her phone, obsessing over how things looked to everyone else. The strange comments she had made over the past few months, sarcastic remarks, dismissive comments about my job, about how I was always working, while she was living the dream. I had brushed it all off, thinking she was just being dramatic. But now I realized I had been fooling myself. I glanced in the rearview mirror at Sophie and Mia, their faces still wet with tears. I couldn't do this. I couldn't let her do this to them. They didn't deserve this. They didn't deserve to be abandoned by the one person who was supposed to love them unconditionally. The one person who had promised to be there for them, no matter what. But Caitlin had broken that promise. She had walked away from everything we had built, everything we had worked for. And she hadn't just left me. She had left our kids behind, alone, in an airport terminal, as if they were just an afterthought. My heart felt like it was being ripped out of my chest. How could she do this to us? I had always been the strong one, the one who kept it together. But this was different. I had no idea how to fix this. I had no idea how to make it right. I had always been the one to make sure everything was in place, making sure our bills were paid, making sure the kids had what they needed, making sure our life was stable. But now, it felt like everything I had worked for had been destroyed in the blink of an eye. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. I couldn't fall apart. Not now. I had to keep it together for Sophie and Mia. They needed me. The car ride felt like it took forever. The silence was suffocating. The weight of what had just happened pressing down on me like a ton of bricks. I didn't know what to do next. I didn't know where to go from here. But I knew one thing for sure: Caitlin wasn't getting away with this. She wasn't going to walk away from this family without facing the consequences. I glanced down at my phone again, hoping for a message, a sign, anything. But there was nothing. No apology, no explanation, just silence. And that silence only made the anger burn even hotter. When we finally got home, I parked the car in the driveway, my hands still trembling. The house that had once felt like a safe haven now felt like a prison. It was just a house now empty, cold, and silent. The kids didn't understand. They didn't know why mommy wasn't coming back. They didn't know why their whole world had just been turned upside down. I tried to hold it together as we walked into the house. But the reality of it all hit me harder than I could have ever imagined. This wasn't just about a failed marriage. This wasn't just about a broken promise. This was about betrayal on a level I had never thought possible. Caitlin had shattered everything. She had torn apart the life we had built, the life I had worked so hard for. Sophie and Mia went to their rooms, still confused, still waiting for an explanation that I didn't have. I couldn't keep lying to them. Couldn't keep pretending everything was okay. I had to find a way to make this right. I had to make Caitlin pay for what she had done. I sat down at the kitchen table, my head spinning. My mind raced through every conversation, every moment I had missed. How could I have been so blind? How could I have missed all the signs? Then, the phone rang. I didn't recognize the number, but I picked it up anyway. It was Michael, my lawyer. "Aaron," he said, his voice calm but serious. I've been looking into Caitlin's finances. We need to talk. I felt my stomach drop. I knew it, I muttered. I knew something wasn't right. Michael didn't waste time. She's been siphoning money from your accounts. I don't know how much, but we need to get ahead of this before it's too late. I gritted my teeth, the fury inside of me building with each word he said. This wasn't just about her walking away. This was a calculated, cold betrayal. We'll deal with it, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. But first, I need to find her. And in that moment, I knew that this was far from over. What Caitlin had done to us wasn't just a betrayal. It was a war. And I wasn't going to lose. I wasn't going to let her destroy everything we had built without paying for it. Not now. Not ever. Alright, I know you're wondering how could she just leave us like that. What was really going on behind the scenes? But what happens next will shock you even more. Do you think I'm about to let her get away with this? Or is there something even bigger I'm planning? Comment 1 if you think I'll take action. Comment 2 if you think I'll let it slide. The choice is yours, but I'm not sure what I'll do yet. The moment I saw the message from Caitlin, it hit me like a freight train. I had thought about her nonchalantly leaving us at the airport, about the empty seat next to her as she boarded that plane. But nothing prepared me for the photo she sent. The sight of Jack and Mia, alone on that cold metal bench, was like a gut punch I couldn't recover from. Sophie's face was streaked with tears, Mia clutching her stuffed bear like it was the last thing tethering her to anything real. How the hell could she do this? I stood there for what felt like forever. My breath caught in my throat, the world around me fading to a blur. The airport buzzed with people, but all I could hear was the sound of my pulse pounding in my ears. I couldn't even think. My body moved on its own by instinct, I suppose, pushing me toward the baggage claim where I'd find them, where I'd find my kids. When I saw them sitting there, just like in the photo, my stomach dropped. Sophie's wide eyes locked on mine before she threw herself into my arms, her small body trembling with every sob. Mia followed quickly, her face pale and wet, still looking for an explanation she couldn't possibly understand. I dropped to my knees, pulling them close, the anger building in my chest. How could Caitlin, the woman I had spent years of my life with, just up and leave them like this? Like they didn't matter? Daddy's here, I whispered, trying to steady my voice, though inside, I felt like I was falling apart. I squeezed them both, the weight of everything crushing me. I had no idea how to fix this. The feeling of betrayal was suffocating, but all I could do was hold on to them, trying to shield them from the confusion. What the hell was I supposed to say to them? Sophie's tiny voice broke through my thoughts. Where's Mommy? Her innocent question sent a spike of pain straight through me. I didn't have an answer. How could I possibly tell her the truth? That her mother, our mother, had left them behind like they were nothing? I tried to steady myself. I had to stay calm. I had to protect them, no matter what. Mommy's not coming back right now, sweetie, I said, the words sounding hollow even to me. But you're safe with me, I'm not going anywhere. Mia looked up at me, her little hand still clutching my sleeve. The fear in her eyes was overwhelming. She didn't understand. She was too young to understand why the woman who had always been there for her was suddenly gone. I had to get us out of here. I had to leave the airport. I had to protect them from whatever hell Caitlin had left behind. The moment I stood up, the reality of it hit me again, harder this time. How could she do this to us? The thought ran through my mind over and over again as I led them out of the terminal. But it didn't make sense. Caitlin had been distant for months, but she had always been there when it counted. At least, that's what I thought. But now I was realizing just how wrong I had been. All those little signs, the credit card bills I'd brushed off, the constant selfies, the attention-seeking posts online, all of it was adding up. And yet, it didn't feel real. I wanted to scream. I wanted to do something, anything, to make this pain stop. But there was nothing I could do. She had made her choice, and I was left to pick up the pieces. I put them in the car, trying to act normal, trying to act like everything was going to be okay. But it wasn't. None of it was okay. And the more I drove, the angrier I got. Angrier at her for abandoning us, and at myself for not seeing this coming. I had been so focused on work, so focused on providing for them, that I had missed the cracks in the foundation of our life. I had been blind to it all, and now I was paying the price. I glanced in the rearview mirror, catching Sophie's eyes. She was looking at me with that wide-eyed confusion, still waiting for me to tell her that everything was fine. But how could I? How could I lie to her when everything was falling apart? I wasn't sure how to hold it together anymore, but for her, for Mia, I had to. I tried calling Caitlin again, but it went straight to voicemail. My frustration mounted with each ring. What the hell was she doing? Was she even thinking about us? Or had she just washed her hands of everything? I couldn't take it anymore. I was already drowning in anger and confusion. And Caitlin wasn't making it any easier. It felt like she was slipping further and further away, and I couldn't get a hold of her. Daddy. Sophie's voice pulled me out of my spiraling thoughts. Where's Mommy? Why isn't she with us? I looked at her in the rearview mirror again. I felt the sting of tears in my eyes. I wanted to lie. I wanted to tell her that Mommy was just on her way, that everything was fine. But I couldn't. I couldn't lie to her like that. Not anymore. I don't know, sweetheart, I said, my voice strained. But we're going to be okay. We'll figure it out, I promise. You and me are safe with me. We made it home, but even the house that had once been our sanctuary felt wrong. Every corner, every piece of furniture, every photo on the wall, it all felt like a lie. The life we had built, the life I thought we had just been shattered in a single moment. I wasn't sure what to do next. I wasn't sure how to pick up the pieces of a life that had just been destroyed. But I knew one thing, I wasn't going to let Caitlin get away with this. I wasn't going to let her tear our family apart without facing the consequences. The phone buzzed again, pulling me from my thoughts. I looked at the screen. Michael, my lawyer. I answered immediately. Aaron, I've been looking into Caitlin's finances, he said, his tone serious. She's been siphoning money from your accounts. We need to talk. I felt my stomach twist. I already knew this was coming. Tell me everything, I said, my voice cold. We'll get to the bottom of this, Michael replied. But you need to brace yourself. This is worse than we thought. I hung up the phone and looked at Sophie and Mia, sitting quietly in the living room. They didn't understand yet. They didn't understand what had just happened to their lives. But I would make sure they would never have to wonder again. I would protect them from this nightmare. I stood up, my fists clenched. Caitlin wasn't getting away with this. Not now. Not ever. The next few hours felt like a blur. I was in a fog, but I couldn't let myself stay there. Sophie and Mia needed me. I had to keep it together for them. It didn't matter how much my chest ached with each breath, or how the weight of betrayal felt like a lead anchor around my heart. I had to find a way to make this right. Caitlin might have abandoned us, but I wasn't going to let her destroy everything we built without consequences. I sat in the living room, my phone buzzing constantly, trying to make sense of everything. I knew I had to act fast. The last thing I wanted was for Caitlin to slip away unnoticed. I tried calling her again. This time, it rang longer. Maybe she would answer. Maybe she would finally tell me what the hell was going on. But the call went straight to voicemail again. This wasn't like her. She always picked up when it was something important, didn't she? I stared at the screen, frustration building in my chest. I looked over at Sophie, her head buried in her hands. I wanted to believe everything was fine, that somehow Caitlin would come back and apologize, that she'd realize the mistake she made. But deep down, I knew it wasn't happening. This wasn't just a mistake. This was something much bigger. I had been living in denial for so long. How had I not seen the signs? The credit card bills. The expensive clothes. The last-minute trips that didn't make sense. She had been siphoning money from our accounts. When the message from Michael came through, I didn't know whether to be relieved or terrified. Aaron, I've been looking into Caitlin's finances, he said. I could hear the seriousness in his voice. She's been siphoning money from your accounts. We need to talk. The weight of his words hit me like a punch to the gut. My head was spinning. What else was she hiding from me? I had to get to the bottom of this. Now, I had to be the one to act. I grabbed my keys and went straight to the office, my mind racing the whole way. The whole time, I was replaying every conversation, every moment I had with Caitlin. The guilt gnawed at me, and I hated myself for not picking up on it sooner. What had I missed? How could I have been so blind? The office felt colder than usual when I walked in. Michael was waiting for me in his usual corner office, looking at me with that concerned, calculating look. He didn't waste time. Aaron, he said, sitting down across from me, we've traced Caitlin's spending habits over the past year. She's been draining your accounts. It's not just personal expenses, it's large, suspicious transfers that went to offshore accounts. I stared at him, unable to fully comprehend what he was saying. My mind was in a haze. What do you mean, offshore accounts? I asked, my voice strained. I couldn't wrap my head around it. She's been funneling money, Aaron. Huge amounts. And not just once or twice. This has been going on for months. She's been siphoning off funds, and now we're seeing evidence of fraudulent transactions. I felt the room closing in on me. It didn't make sense. How could she do this? How could the woman I trusted with everything, the woman I thought I knew, betray me like this? She'd been living this lie right under my nose. I had worked my ass off for this life. I had sacrificed everything for our family, for Caitlin and the kids. And she had used it all, every penny we had, just to escape. To live a life I couldn't even begin to imagine. Where is she now? I asked, my voice low and tight. I could feel the anger rising again, bubbling beneath the surface. I was so close to losing it, but I had to stay calm. I had to focus. We don't know yet, Michael said, shifting in his seat. But we've got the authorities involved. We'll track her down, don't worry. But I couldn't just sit back and wait. The betrayal was still raw, and every moment I sat there, letting her get away with it, only made my blood boil more. What else do you have? I asked, my fists clenched. I couldn't just sit and wait for them to catch her. I needed to know everything. I needed to know where she'd gone, how far she'd taken this. We've been following the money, Michael said. We traced some of the larger transfers, and we found a few destinations, but it's tricky. She's covered her tracks well. We need more time. More time? Time was the one thing I didn't have. Time was running out. Every minute I wasted sitting around was another minute. Caitlin had to get further away. I couldn't let her slip through my fingers like this. I'll find her myself, I said, standing up. You do what you need to do. But I'm going after her. Michael looked at me like I was crazy. Aaron, you don't know where she is. We're getting close. You need to stay out of this. But I didn't care. I wasn't going to wait around while she disappeared into the wind. I'm done waiting, I shot back. I'm going to find her, Michael. I don't care what it takes. I could feel the walls closing in, the suffocating pressure of it all weighing on me. Every plan, every move I had made in my life now felt like a lie. I wasn't just fighting for my money, or for my marriage. I was fighting for my family. Caitlin had torn apart everything I thought I knew about us, and I wasn't going to let her get away with it. I left the office, the anger still seething inside me, and went back home, where the silence was deafening. Sophie and Mia were still waiting for answers they weren't going to get. I couldn't tell them the truth, not yet. They didn't need to know all the details, not until I had a plan. But one thing was certain, Caitlin was going to pay for what she had done. I didn't care how long it took or how many people I had to go through. I was going to find her. And when I did, she was going to realize that she had made the biggest mistake of her life. I couldn't shake the feeling that Caitlin was still slipping through my fingers. The more I tried to get a grip on the situation, the more elusive she became. Michael had his team looking into her finances, but even as they made progress, I couldn't help but feel like I was losing time. Every second that passed, she was that much further away from me and the kids. I had to move faster, had to find her before she could disappear for good. Sitting in my car outside the office, I felt like I was running on fumes. My mind was racing through every possibility, every lead I could think of, but I couldn't focus. The idea of Caitlin starting a new life, leaving the kids behind, was like a knife in my chest. I didn't know how much more of this I could take. I couldn't even begin to process how deep her betrayal went. And the worst part? I had let it happen. I had been too focused on everything else, too focused on building our life, on keeping the job together, to notice that things were falling apart right under my nose. How had I missed it? The lavish spending, the secretive behavior, it was all there. I just hadn't wanted to see it. I pulled myself together, knowing I couldn't afford to lose it now. I had to stay sharp. I wasn't doing this for me anymore. I was doing this for Sophie and Mia. They deserved more than this. They deserved better. They didn't deserve to be abandoned like this, like pawns in some game Caitlin was playing. She had made her choice, and now, it was my turn to make mine. I opened my phone again, scrolling through the messages, the news. Nothing. No sign of Caitlin. I stared at the blank screen, the absence of any response from her making the anger flare up again. I dialed Michael's number, hoping for some kind of lead, something that would finally put me on the right track. Michael, the first said when he picked up. Have we got anything? Anything at all? I'm still tracking her movements, he said. But she's been covering her tracks. I've got people looking into her last known locations, but right now, it's like she's vanished into thin air. I ran a hand through my hair, frustration building inside me. She's not gone, Michael. She's out there somewhere. She's just hiding, waiting for this to blow over. Well, it won't, he replied firmly. We're getting closer. Just give it a little more time. But I couldn't. Time wasn't on my side. It never had been. The more I thought about it, the more the situation seemed like a perfect storm. Caitlin had planned this for months, maybe longer. All the signs were there, but I had been too caught up in my own life to notice. I had let her manipulate me, let her slip away into a life I didn't even recognize. I wasn't going to let her get away with this. I ended the call and turned the ignition, the engine rumbling to life. I had to do something, anything, to get a lead. I couldn't just sit here and wait. My mind kept drifting back to the last time I saw Caitlin. The way she looked at me, almost as if she had already made her peace with everything. Like she didn't care what happened to me or the kids anymore. How had I not seen it? How had I not recognized that look for what it really was? I drove through the streets of Los Angeles, the city I thought I knew so well, but everything felt foreign now. The places I once walked past with pride, the restaurants, the stores, they all felt tainted. All I could think about was Caitlin, her betrayal, the life we had built crumbling in an instant. I drove aimlessly for a while, the weight of the situation crushing me, until I found myself at a familiar spot, the house. Our house. I pulled into the driveway and sat there for a while, staring at the front door. Everything seemed wrong. The house that once felt like a home now felt like a prison. I could see the life I had fought so hard for slipping away, and there was nothing I could do to stop it. I got out of the car and walked toward the door, my mind still racing. Sophie and Mia were inside, probably still trying to make sense of everything. They didn't know the full extent of what was happening, and I didn't know how to explain it to them. How could I? How could I tell them that our mother had left them behind? That she had chosen someone else over them? I opened the door slowly, stepping inside, and was hit with a wave of emptiness. The house was too quiet, too still. I walked down the hallway, each step feeling heavier than the last. I needed a plan. I needed to do something. I stopped in front of the bookshelf where we kept all the family photos. I pulled down one of the albums, flipping through the pages, seeing the pictures of happier times. There we were, Caitlin and I, smiling, holding hands at the beach, surrounded by our children. The photos didn't lie, but now, looking at them, they felt like a cruel reminder of everything Caitlin had taken from me. I slammed the album shut, my fists clenched. I couldn't keep doing this. I couldn't keep pretending everything was fine when it was falling apart. Caitlin had made her choice, and now I had to make mine. I walked into the living room, my eyes scanning the room, but all I saw was the same emptiness I had felt since the moment I walked through the door. I couldn't do this alone. I couldn't fix this on my own. But I wasn't going to let Caitlin get away with what she had done. I wasn't going to let her destroy everything we had built, without facing the consequences. The phone buzzed again, snapping me out of my thoughts. It was Michael. "Aaron," he said, his voice tight. "We found something. She's been spotted at a hotel in Honolulu. We think she's there, with Marcus." Honolulu. It was her escape. The final destination in this twisted game she had been playing. And now I knew where she was. I wasn't going to waste any more time. I had to go. I had to find her. "Thanks, Michael." The first on my way. I hung up the phone and grabbed my keys. This was it. The moment I'd been waiting for. The moment I would finally face Caitlin. She wouldn't get away with this. Not this time. The flight to Honolulu felt like it lasted forever. Every second I spent on that plane, the more my mind raced with questions I couldn't answer. What was I going to say to Caitlin when I found her? What was I supposed to feel? Anger? Relief? I wasn't sure anymore. All I knew was that I had to confront her. She had left us behind. torn apart everything we had built, and now, it was time for her to face the consequences. The closer we got to the island, the more my heart pounded. Honolulu was a place I never thought I'd have to face Caitlin. It was supposed to be a vacation spot. A place to escape, not a place where I'd confront the woman who had betrayed me. The whole thing felt surreal. I kept telling myself I was doing the right thing, that I had to put everything on the line for Sophie and Mia. They deserved answers. They deserved to know the truth, even if it meant exposing everything Caitlin had done. I checked my phone one more time as we landed, hoping for any word, any sign that Caitlin was ready to face me. But there was nothing, no text, no call. Just silence. It was like she had disappeared entirely. I wanted to believe she would explain herself, that she would admit what she had done. But deep down, I knew better. She had already made her choice. She had already moved on. I took a cab straight to the Hilton Hawaiian Village. It felt like an eternity just driving through the streets of Honolulu. The palm trees swaying in the wind, the sun beating down from above as tourists walked by, unaware of the storm that was about to hit. The luxury, the beauty of the place, made my stomach churn. Caitlin had chosen this life, this fake paradise over her family, over me. It didn't sit right with me. Not one bit. When I got to the hotel, I barely noticed the breathtaking views, the pristine beaches, or the golden sand. I wasn't here for any of that. I was here to find Caitlin. I was here to make her understand what she had done, what she had destroyed. My hands were shaking as I walked through the lobby, the cool air conditioning doing nothing to calm my nerves. I had no idea what I was walking into, but I had to do this. The concierge looked at me like I was crazy when I asked about Caitlin's room. "I'm sorry, sir, I can't give out that information," she said politely, but there was something in her eyes. She knew exactly who I was looking for. I could see the hesitation, the guilt in her expression. It only made me more sure that I was on the right path. I pushed harder. "Look, I'm her husband. I need to find her. It's important." She hesitated for a second, glancing around nervously before she finally said, "Room 214. Second floor." I didn't waste a second more. I thanked her and started toward the elevator, my heart hammering in my chest. I wasn't sure what I expected to find, but I couldn't stand the uncertainty anymore. I had to see her face to face. I had to know if she was really as cold as she seemed, or if there was still a trace of the woman I thought I knew left inside. When the elevator doors opened, I felt a wave of heat hit me. The hallway was quiet, too quiet. My footsteps echoed off the walls as I walked toward room 214. Each step felt like a countdown. I had no idea how this was going to play out, but I couldn't turn back now. I stopped in front of the door, my hand hovering over the handle. I took a deep breath, steadied myself, and knocked. There was a long pause. Then, the door opened, and I was face to face with her. Caitlin. The woman I had married. The woman who had torn my life apart. She looked exactly the same, but at the same time, she looked so different. Her eyes were guarded, her smile forced, like she had been practicing it in front of a mirror. "Aaron," she said, her voice too calm, too composed. She didn't look shocked to see me. In fact, it felt like she had been expecting me. I stared at her for a long moment, trying to find the words. But nothing came out. The anger, the hurt, the betrayal, everything just hit me at once. "What the hell, Caitlin?" I finally managed to say. My voice was tight with rage. "What is this? What have you done?" She shrugged, a small, almost mocking smile on her lips. "I don't know what you're talking about," she said, the words coming too easily, like she was just going through the motions. I shook my head, the frustration boiling over. "You left us. You left me. You left your kids behind, Caitlin. And for what? A vacation? A life with him?" I stepped closer to her, my fists clenched at my sides. "You don't just walk away from your family like that. You don't do what you did, and just pretend it's fine. You don't get to do this to us and expect me to just walk away." Her expression hardened. She crossed her arms, taking a step back as if she was preparing for a fight. "You don't understand," she said, her voice low. "I had to do this. I had no choice." "No choice?" I asked, incredulous. "You had a choice. You always had a choice. And you chose to abandon everything we had. You chose to turn your back on your family, On me. She didn't respond right away. She just stared at me, like she was waiting for something. For what? I wasn't sure. But I couldn't wait anymore. I had to make her understand what she had done. I had to make her face the consequences of her actions. You think you can just walk away from this? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. You think you can leave us here and just move on with your life? It doesn't work like that. Caitlin. The silence stretched between us, and for a moment, I thought she might say something, might break down. But she didn't. I'm done, she finally said, her voice cold. It's over. I stood there, staring at her, the weight of her words sinking in. It was over. And I had no idea where to go from here. But I wasn't done. Not by a long shot. I had come this far. I wasn't leaving without answers. Fine, I said, turning away. It's over. But you're not getting away with this. I walked out of the room, leaving Caitlin standing there, her false smile still in place, her mask still intact. And for the first time, I felt the anger begin to fade. What came next? I wasn't sure. But I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't done fighting. Not yet. I slammed the door behind me, the weight of what had just happened settling deep in my gut. Caitlin's words echoed in my mind. It's over. She made it sound so final, so easy. But I wasn't ready to let it go. Not like that. Not when I had so many questions. So much left to say. She thought she could just walk away from everything, our family, our life, and erase the damage she'd caused. But I wasn't going to let her do that. Not this time. I walked down the hallway, the anger inside me boiling over. How could she stand there, cold and indifferent, like everything she'd done to us was justified? Like she had the right to leave us behind without any explanation? I was a fool. I had let her manipulate me for years, too blind to see it, too wrapped up in our life together to notice how far she'd drifted away from me. But now? Now everything had changed. The drive back to the hotel felt like a blur. The streets of Honolulu, the palm trees, the luxury cars, it all felt surreal, like I was walking through a dream I couldn't wake up from. I had come here looking for answers, but all I found was more questions. I was facing a woman I didn't even recognize anymore. Someone who had chosen to abandon everything we had built, without a second thought. She wasn't the same person I had married. She wasn't the woman I had trusted with my heart, my life. That woman was gone, replaced by someone cold and calculating. When I got back to the hotel, I sat down on the edge of the bed, my hands shaking as I ran them through my hair. I was so damn tired. I hadn't slept in days, too restless to find peace. All I could think about was what Caitlin had done to us. I wanted to scream, to lash out, to make her feel the pain she had caused. But there was a part of me that knew it wouldn't help. There was no undoing what she had done. No taking back the years we'd spent together. I had given her everything, and she had thrown it all away for a life that wasn't even real. I picked up my phone and called Michael again, trying to steady my breathing. I had to focus. I had to stay sharp. I couldn't afford to lose control now. Not when I was so close to getting the answers I needed. Aaron, Michael answered. His voice sounded like he'd been waiting for my call. What happened? Did you talk to her? I talked to her, I said, my voice tight. And it's worse than I thought. She's not just gone. She's completely checked out. She's moved on, and she's not even sorry for it. Michael was quiet for a moment. I'm sorry, Aaron. I know how hard this must be. But we've got a plan. We've been tracking her, and we've got more leads coming in. We'll find her, and when we do, she's going to have to face everything she's done. I nodded, even though he couldn't see me. I need her to pay for what she's done, Michael. She's destroyed everything, my family, my trust. I won't let her get away with it. We're not going to let her, Michael assured me. But you have to stay focused. Don't make any moves without us. This is bigger than just you and her. We've got the law on our side now. The law. It felt like a hollow word. Caitlin had already stolen everything from me, my family, my future, my peace of mind. What was left for the law to fix? I didn't know. But I wasn't going to sit here and wait for justice to play out slowly. I needed to act. I needed to make her see what she had done. Make her understand that she couldn't just walk away and pretend like nothing had happened. I'm coming back, I said, my voice firm. I'll be there as soon as I can. I can't let this go. I'm not going to let her walk away from this without facing the consequences. Aaron, listen to me, Michael said, his voice suddenly urgent. You need to be careful. Caitlin's made some dangerous moves. She's not just running away from you. She's been planning this. She's involved in some serious stuff, and if you're not careful, you could make things worse. I ignored the warning in his voice. It wasn't about the danger anymore. It was about getting back what was mine, about making sure my kids didn't grow up with the image of their mother leaving them behind. They deserved better than this. I deserved better than this. I don't care, I said, my voice cold. I'm doing this. I'll take care of it. I hung up the phone, the silence in the room wrapping around me like a heavy blanket. I stood up, pacing the room. The weight of everything Caitlin had done pressed on me harder now. I wanted to believe that she still cared, that she was still the woman I had married, the mother of my children. But I knew the truth now. She wasn't. She had moved on, and I had to move on too. The road ahead wasn't going to be easy. I knew that, but it was the only road I had left. There was no going back to what we had. There was no going back to the life I had believed in. But I could still fight for my kids. I could still give them the future they deserved. And that was what kept me going. I grabbed my jacket and walked out of the room, determination setting in. Caitlin wasn't going to get away with this. She had made her choice, but I was going to make sure that her choice didn't destroy the lives of the people she had left behind. It was time to take control. Time to face her one last time. I wasn't done yet. Not by a long shot. I could feel the tension building inside me as I approached the hotel room door. Every step felt heavier than the last, and my pulse was hammering in my chest like a drumbeat that wouldn't stop. This was it. The moment I had been waiting for, the moment I'd been dreading. I could barely hear the noise of the bustling hotel around me. All I could hear was the sound of my own breathing and the low hum of the air conditioning. But it all felt distant. My world had narrowed down to this moment, this room, and the woman standing just behind that door. I raised my hand to knock, but for a brief second, I hesitated. What would I say to her? How could I even begin to make her understand the hurt she had caused, the destruction she had left in her wake? Could she really understand? Was she even capable of it? The woman I had married, the mother of my children, had disappeared, replaced by someone unrecognizable, someone who would rather abandon her family than face the consequences of her actions. I shook my head, clearing my thoughts. I couldn't waste any more time. This had to end. I knocked once, then twice, the sound echoing in the silence of the hallway. My heart was beating so fast now that it almost hurt. The door opened, and there she was, Caitlin. She didn't look shocked to see me. In fact, she almost looked prepared, ready. Aaron, she said, her voice as calm as ever, like nothing had changed, like nothing was wrong. I could see her fighting to keep up the facade, but it was starting to crack. Her eyes couldn't meet mine for more than a few seconds at a time. I stepped inside, ignoring the way my stomach churned, pushing aside the disgust. I felt it seeing her like this. This was no longer about us. This was about the betrayal, about the damage she'd done. You left us, I said, my voice quieter than I meant it to be, but it carried the weight of everything I had been feeling since the moment I saw that text. You left me. You left our kids. Her eyes narrowed, but she didn't try to argue. I'm sorry you feel that way, she said, her voice too smooth. But it's not like you think. I laughed, a bitter, humorless sound. It's exactly like I think, Caitlin. You walked away from us without a second thought. You didn't even look back. She shifted uncomfortably, looking down at her shoes, then back up at me. I needed to do this for myself, Aaron. I've been trapped in this life, in this marriage, for so long. I didn't know who I was anymore. You were controlling. You didn't let me be me. That hit me harder than anything else she had said. Controlling? The first repeated, incredulity creeping into my voice. You think I've been controlling? After everything I've done to give us the life we have? I worked my ass off for us. For you. For the kids. And you just walked away. I didn't mean to hurt you, she said, her voice softening, but I wasn't buying it. The words fell flat. It didn't matter how much she softened her tone. I couldn't let her twist this around. Couldn't let her make it seem like she was the victim here. No, Caitlin, I said, my voice gaining strength as I took a step closer to her. You didn't mean to hurt me? Then why did you do it? Why did you leave us? Don't pretend like this was some kind of mistake, like you didn't know exactly what you were doing. I could see her throat tighten as she swallowed. She wasn't prepared for this. She hadn't expected me to come at her with this much anger, with this much rage. But I wasn't going to back down. Not this time. I wasn't going to let her walk away and pretend like none of it mattered. I didn't want this to happen, she said, her voice cracking slightly, but I could tell it was more about her own guilt than any remorse for what she'd done. I didn't want it to be like this. But I had no choice. No choice? I echoed, my voice rising now. You had a choice. You always had a choice, Caitlin. You just didn't want to face it. You chose him. You chose your freedom, your escape. And you left us in the dust. I could see the tears welling up in her eyes, but I wasn't about to let her guilt trip me. Not now. Not after everything she had put me through. You think that's going to make this better? I asked, my voice shaking with anger. You think you can just cry and make it go away? You don't get to do that, Caitlin. You don't get to break my heart, break our family, and then expect me to forgive you just because you're sorry now. She shook her head, her lips trembling, but there was no real apology behind it. She was lost, completely and utterly lost in her own selfishness. I don't expect forgiveness, she said softly, her eyes downcast. I don't deserve it. For a moment, I was silent. I wanted to believe her. I wanted to believe she was finally seeing what she had done. But I couldn't. I couldn't trust her anymore. Not after everything. No, I said, my voice a whisper now, but firm. You don't deserve forgiveness. But you will face the consequences of your choices. You can't just walk away from this, Caitlin. You can't just walk away from your kids and think it's over. She took a deep breath, looking at me as if she were trying to read me, trying to understand where this was coming from. You don't understand, she whispered, her eyes filling with tears. I thought I was doing the right thing. I thought I was doing what was best for me, for all of us. But I see now. I see how much I've hurt you. I didn't mean to hurt you. I never did. Maybe you didn't mean to, I said, my voice shaking with emotion. But you did. You walked away from us, Caitlin. And now we're left here picking up the pieces. The room was silent for a long moment. It felt like time had stopped. But then, slowly, Caitlin reached out, her hand trembling. I don't know how to fix this, she whispered. I don't know how to make it right. I shook my head. You can't fix this. It's too late for that. I turned and walked away, not looking back. I had said everything I needed to say. She wasn't the woman I had married. She wasn't the mother of my children anymore. And I wasn't going to waste any more time trying to make her understand. The damage was done. Now, it was time for me to rebuild. To focus on what mattered. To protect my kids and make sure they never had to wonder what happened. It was over. But I would be damned if I let her win. I stood there in the quiet, staring at the door I had just walked through, feeling the weight of every moment that had led me here. Caitlin's words, her apology, her guilt, none of it felt like enough. I thought maybe, just maybe, after everything, I would feel some sort of relief. But I didn't. There was no closure in her tears. No comfort in her quiet admission of wrongdoing. The truth was, I had spent too many years living with half-truths, pretending that everything was fine. Now that the mask had slipped, I realized how much of a lie it had all been. I left the hotel room and headed back to the car, my thoughts scattered. The weight of the conversation still hung heavy on me, but I wasn't sure where to go from here. The anger was still there, buried beneath the surface. But it wasn't just anger anymore. It was something deeper. Something colder. The betrayal wasn't just about Caitlin's affair, her lies, or the way she had abandoned our family. It was about the realization that the person I had loved wasn't the person who had walked out on us. She had become someone else entirely, a stranger who had made a choice, and that choice had cost us everything. As I drove back to the hotel, the streets of Honolulu blurred past me. The city, the lights, the hustle and bustle of the island, it all felt so insignificant. Nothing mattered but the knot in my stomach, and the realization that everything I had worked for, everything I had believed in, was gone. I didn't even know how to process it all. How had we gotten here? How had the life I thought we had built together, the life I had worked so hard for, been torn apart in such a short amount of time? I parked the car and sat there for a while, the engine idling, the quiet enveloping me like a thick fog. I should have been angry. I should have been shouting, throwing things, anything to get the frustration out. But there was nothing. It felt like all my rage had been drained from me, leaving nothing but an empty shell. My mind was racing in circles, but no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't find an answer that made sense. I thought back to everything Caitlin had said in the hotel room, the way she tried to justify her actions. I didn't believe a word of it. But a part of me couldn't help but wonder, did she really believe it? Did she believe that leaving us behind was the right thing to do? Was she so far gone that she didn't even see the damage she had done? I shook my head, trying to push the thought out of my mind. It didn't matter anymore. I couldn't keep going back to the past. I had to focus on the future. I had to focus on the kids. They needed me now more than ever. They needed me to be strong, to be the father they deserved. I couldn't afford to get lost in the past. Caitlin had already made her choice, and now it was my turn to make mine. I pulled myself together, wiped the tear that had started to form in the corner of my eye, and got out of the car. I had to face this head on. I couldn't hide anymore. I had to figure out how to pick up the pieces of the life she had shattered and rebuild something for Sophie and Mia. I couldn't do it alone, though. I wasn't sure where to start, but I knew I needed help. I needed a plan. Back in my hotel room, I collapsed onto the bed and picked up my phone. I called Michael, feeling the weight of the conversation I needed to have. The guilt, the frustration, the helplessness, it was all bubbling to the surface again. "Aaron, what's going on?" Michael asked when he picked up, his voice steady but filled with concern. "I saw her," I said, the words feeling strange as they left my mouth. "I talked to Caitlin." Michael paused for a moment. "And?" "She's gone," I said, shaking my head as if that could make sense of it all. "She doesn't care anymore. She's made her choice, Michael. She's gone, and I don't know how to fix this." "Aaron, I know this is tough, but you need to keep your head. You've got to stay focused on what's next. Don't let her control the narrative anymore." I clenched my jaw, frustration mixing with the exhaustion. "I can't just move on, Michael. I can't just pretend everything is fine when it's not. She destroyed everything. Aaron, you've got a family to take care of. You've got to focus on what's in front of you, your kids, your future. This isn't about Caitlin anymore. It's about you, about getting back what's yours." I wanted to argue, to keep spinning in circles, but I knew he was right. I couldn't stay stuck in this moment. Caitlin wasn't going to come back. She wasn't going to suddenly realize the weight of what she had done and rush back into my arms, begging for forgiveness. That wasn't going to happen. I had to move on. I had to start fresh. "Okay," I said, my voice steady now. "I'm going to do it. I'm going to make sure she faces the consequences. I'm going to protect the kids. I'll find a way to make sure they're okay, no matter what it takes." "That's what I like to hear," Michael said. "We'll make sure you've got everything in place. You're not alone in this." I ended the call, but the words echoed in my mind. I wasn't alone in this. For the first time in a long time, I started to believe it. I wasn't going to let Caitlin's choices destroy me. I wasn't going to let her win. I had too much to lose. Sophie and Mia needed me, and I wasn't going to let them down. The next few weeks were a blur. I focused on the kids, making sure they felt safe. Making sure they knew I was there for them. I couldn't fix what Caitlin had done, but I could protect them. I could show them that no matter what happened, they would always have me. I filed for divorce, I fought for custody, and I made sure Caitlin didn't get away with what she had done. Every day was a battle, but I didn't back down. I couldn't. Not when so much was at stake. And then, one night, as I tucked Sophie into bed, she looked up at me with her big, innocent eyes and asked, "Daddy, when is Mommy coming home?" I swallowed hard, my heart breaking all over again. But I smiled, kissed her forehead, and whispered, "Mommy's not coming back, sweetie. But I'm here, and I'm not going anywhere." I meant it. I would fight for them. I would protect them, no matter what it took. Caitlin had made her choice, and I was going to make sure she understood that there were consequences for walking away from her family. But more than that, I was going to make sure my kids knew they were loved. That they were worth more than any of this, more than Caitlin's lies. More than the pain. They were my world. And I was going to rebuild it, one day at a time. Now, after everything that's gone down, do you think she's finally going to face the music? Or will she escape without a trace? Here's the question. How far would you go to get back at someone who destroyed your life? I took matters into my own hands. and the consequences were huge. Don't miss the shocking twist that could change everything. Drop your thoughts in the comments, and let me know what you'd do in my shoes. The story's not over yet. Keep watching. This experience taught me one of the hardest lessons of my life. Trust is fragile, and betrayal can break more than just relationships. It can shatter everything you thought you knew about your world. In the end, it's not about revenge, it's about protecting what truly matters. Our families, our futures they're worth fighting for. No matter how deep the hurt or how impossible the road ahead seems, we must stay focused on what we can control. For anyone facing a similar storm, remember this: your strength is your resilience, and you're never alone in rebuilding what's been lost. Keep fighting. Keep standing.